The sudden death of Pius XI killed the plan to break the Vatican's alliance with the fascists. Just like popes being murdered and martyred in the Middle Ages, once again, the job of being pope had become deadly. Scholars today still raise disturbing questions about the pope's death.
As soon as he died, the papal chambers was entered by two people, just two. One was Cardinal Pacelli, who later became Pope Pius XII, who was the engineer of the Concordat with Hitler. The second was the Vatican physician.
Cardinal Pacelli and the Vatican physician immediately ordered Pius XI's body to be embalmed. The Church had never allowed this practice before. Also, the Vatican did not allow an autopsy to be performed, raising further suspicions. Pius XI's death remains a mystery to this day.
There is reason to believe that Italian fascists poisoned him. But of course, as with most conspiracies, you keep them covered up not through absolute covering up of facts, but through obfuscation. There's so much claim and counterclaim and controversy that most people just finally get tired of it and turn away.
This was not the last time in recent history that secrets, cover-ups, even deaths would scandalize the Church. On May 5th, 1998, Italians woke to shocking headlines. Sangue in Vaticano. Violence had erupted within the Vatican, one of the most secret and protected cities on earth. Someone had been murdered within its walls.
On May 4th, 1998, a nun made her way through the barracks of the Swiss Guard in the Vatican and discovered the bodies of the commander of the Swiss Guard, Alois Estermann, his wife Gladys, and a young Lance Corporal, Cedric Tournay. The Vatican, a few hours later, said that the young Lance Corporal had shot the commander and his wife before turning the gun on himself.
What was behind this horrific crime? Had the fortress of the Vatican been infiltrated? Was it part of a larger plot to overthrow the Church? Dan Brown couldn't have written the ensuing cover-up better.
It was only 4 hours after the bodies were discovered that the Vatican announced that, according to its official version, the Lance Corporal had killed the commander and his wife and then killed himself in a fit of madness. We weren't told what the basis for this conclusion was.
The terse nature of the Vatican statement about the Swiss Guard murders only inflamed the story more.
Basically, the Italian newspapers had no idea what to make of all this, and all they had to go on were a few lines from the Vatican. So, of course, that's where the question started.
What appeared on the surface as a bizarre crime in one of the most protected secret societies on Earth may have been more political than previously known.
Cedric Tournay was made out to be a madman, an alcoholic, a drug addict by the Vatican, but the truth is that he was actually quite a typical Swiss Guard. He was dedicated to the Pope, he swore to sacrifice his life if necessary for the Pope, and he wanted to act as a bodyguard for the Pope, and all these expectations that he harbored in him were, of course, turned out to be illusions.
But in another twist, investigative journalist Devin Jackson finds a possible link between the Swiss Guard, this elite army sworn to protect the Pope and Church, and a secret society from the past, the Knights Templar. The very knights who once guarded the Pope were destroyed by the Pope. Did this investigation expose the resurgence of this secret society? It's a case that never has been solved. And like their predecessors, the Knights Templar, the Swiss Guard are tightly keeping their secrets.
Despite the huge pressure for a public investigation and the public wanting to find out more about the cause of the murders, the Vatican battened down its hatches completely. It refused an offer of help from the Italian Interior Ministry. It refused offers of help from other Italian crime experts. The morning following the murders, all the Swiss Guards were gathered together by the chaplain, and they were made to swear silence on the affair, on anything they knew about the protagonists involved.
While the murders cast a more scrutinizing light on the Swiss Guards, their undying dedication to the Pope is beyond dispute. In many ways, they are just as secretive as the Vatican.
The Swiss Guard is a secretive institution like any department inside the Vatican. The officers, the men of the Swiss Guard, have to swear an oath of loyalty to the Church, and it's inculcated into them that includes defending the interests of the Church at all times.
Though Dan Brown depicts the Swiss Guards as a sophisticated private army in Angels and Demons, experts tell a different story.
It's fairer to characterize the Swiss Guard as a tourist attraction, a paper tiger, rather than a crack fighting force.
Because of their tangible connection with the Vatican, some even suspect that papal foes, like Knights Templar, infiltrated the Swiss Guards centuries ago.
When the Knights Templars took off their tunics and rolled themselves into the general population, it stands to reason that they would insinuate themselves into positions of power, to include the Swiss Guards around the Vatican, to include the secret societies. They probably infiltrated many walks of life.
The Vatican has always been rumored to have a secret service, but it's not an intelligence system as we know it in other Western countries. It's basically a network of information, a prodigious network of information, because it's based on priests in Italy, but of course all over the world, and all sorts of religious institutions who bring in a flow of information to the Vatican. But there are some blind spots, and one of them is terrorism, and that's why the Vatican have to rely on information from people like the CIA, the French Secret Service, or even the Italian Secret Service. My key conclusion after watching and talking to the Swiss Guards is that they're not equipped to protect the Pope.
The biggest threat to the Vatican, though, may not be from terrorists. Have secret societies infiltrated the Church itself? Some believe that they have, and that there is a money trail leading to more murders at the Vatican. Perhaps even of another pope.
It would be most instructive if everyone was to study the P2 scandal in Italy back during the administration of Ronald Reagan back in the 80s. P2 stands for Propaganda Dua, which is the name of a Masonic lodge in Italy. They said they were financed through Illuminized Freemasons in Switzerland, known as the Gnomes of Zurich. It was a heck of a story, and it was big news in Europe, but over in America, we barely got to hear much of anything about it.
The Propaganda Dua had close business relations with the Vatican Bank, which was headed by Chicago-born Archbishop Thomas Marcinkus. Eventually, several high-ranking cardinals and bishops became members of the Masonic-led P2.
But here we have it in the 1960s, a secret Masonic organization that became incredibly powerful, with tentacles throughout the world, and you had over 121 Catholic hierarchs. I'm talking about archbishops, bishops, cardinals, members of the society.
By 1978, the newly appointed Pope John Paul I became aware of the Vatican's relationship with P2. He began an investigation, but he would not live to see it completed. Did the trail from the Knights Templar to the Illuminati and finally to the Masons somehow lead to John Paul's premature death? Historian Clive Prince believes it could have been an inside job.
That many people have suspected that that was a result of some kind of faction within, within the church, within the Curia, the church's civil service, if you like, that didn't want this man to be pope because of financial scandals that were going on at the time that they thought he might uncover.
A few years after the death of John Paul I, the Vatican was swept up in the Ambrosiano affair, one of the world's biggest banking scandals, which led to another bizarre death.
The P2 were also very big into banking, and around this time, the bank Ambrosia, one of the largest banks in Italy, and it was called the Vatican Bank, failed. The head of the bank was a person named Roberto Calvi, who was found hanging from the Blackfriars Bridge in London with stones in his pocket, kind of symbolic of a Masonic assassination rather than a simple hanging.
A Masonic rule says that a traitor